Thank you so much for tuning into my show, William Wallace for America. Today's episode is brought to you, as usual, lately by Patriot Mobile. Please consider switching your cell phone service to a company that loves America as much as you and I do by going to patriotmobile.com/WWFA. Today's episode is going to be a dive into not what's going on in Minnesota, because in some people's opinion, it's kind of tapering down a little bit when Tom Holman announced today that they're going to take out, I think, about 700 agents out of the area. But today's episode started from a conversation that I had on Facebook with a friend of mine, and I'm going to go through that. And as I was writing it and typing it and corresponding with this person, a lot of things came to my mind that I think are not being discussed about what's happening in Minnesota and just what's happening in general. And then it kind of always brings me back to freedom and liberty issues, which, as you know, is where I like to hang out, because not only do I think we're losing our freedoms and our liberties, but there's a lot else around that. It's cliche ish, and I know I say it a lot, but there's a lot of things going on in our government, our bureaucracy, in the narratives, in everything that's happening in our country that not only robs and manipulates freedom and liberty, but at the same time, it it manipulates, I'll say it again, at the same time, it manipulates our thought process, which led me to the bigger conclusion. So I'm gonna get to the main point here first, and then we'll go back and cover everything else first. So hang in with me, because I'm gonna do some deep dives on some different things here about what's been happening. You know, we often talk regularly about, where we're losing freedoms and liberties on my show, but I've come to the conclusion, and maybe this is a turning point for me in my own show, they don't need to take our freedoms and our liberties, because they can control us already. They don't need to steal our First Amendment, our Second Amendment. They don't need to take away our Fourth Amendment rights, even though they already have those and stole those in the Patriot Act. But and they are continually stealing them in other ways without due process in a lot of other situations. And that's another rabbit hole for another day when I go over some Bill of Rights stuff. But they are learning to control us, and as a result, our freedoms, through the narratives, through guilt, through a lot of other ways, through the news stories, towards turning our passions in the directions of things that take us away from our freedoms and our liberties. And I'm going to kind of highlight a little bit of that as I go through some of the news stories and talking points. All too often, we forget that, the bigger picture, and as I was talked about before on my show, and we get distracted by the shiny objects or the squirrels, and all of a sudden, and it's not just one side. Uh, Everybody on both sides is guilty of this, because while I can agree with a lot of my friends on the right when they say, well, the Mr. Pretty and Miss Good, they were violating the law, and they got killed as a result, and they were, and I see the argument on that side, where in the case of Good, the ICE agent responded according to his training. And then when the Pretty case comes up, I got some other thoughts on that are not anti-Second Amendment, by the way, but we'll talk about that in a second. I'm gonna wait till I get to that one to talk about in full. But I can see not both sides, and it's interesting when I say that, not both sides in the way that, well, I'm just gonna compromise my beliefs, I'm gonna compromise my feelings, and I'm gonna agree with the people that are on the left protesting ICE. No, that's not it at all. not at all whatsoever. But I do have a compassionate side. And when you look at the bigger picture, it's a little bit easier to not only find the things that maybe we have in common for solution purposes only, not giving up your ideological beliefs, but coming together on some things that might have some solutions with compassion. Again, that is going to turn off some of my right-wing friends. Well, those leftists, those communists are causing all these riots, and that's why we have these problems, and that's why those 2 people died, because the communists caused the riots, and they're paid protesters. And while I certainly agree that many of these protesters are paid protesters, their passions are being ignited and excited rather, by the news narratives that ICE is bad, Trump is bad, everything's bad, and immigrants are good, and this is a violation of their rights, and those flames get fueled up. I wholeheartedly realize that that's what's happening. But let me take away some of the blame, not all of it. Because look, we as humans have access to a lot of information. We as humans have access to not only a lot of information, but we have access to brains. Look, God blessed us with the ability to think for ourselves. Problem is, our government, our educational system has caused us to be too dependent on not only government, not only how to think through the education process that has been controlled all too long by a Department of Education that has become more political than it has educational. It's become more of a conduit for money laundering schemes to be able to pierce the veil of the 10th Amendment for states by causing them to teach certain things that are based on the doctrine or the ideologies of whoever's in office at that time. So, and we get constantly bombarded by narratives, and there are going to be many people on both sides that it is easier for them to adhere to a narrative or an ideology that has been repeated, or a news story that has been repeated over and over again, and they get conditioned to accept these things as facts. And they get so galvanized in them that they forget that some of the best ways to fix all this is, I don't want to say working together, I don't want to say kumbaya. Again, I'm not trying to be the moderate here. I'm simply saying, on an overall picture, we as a country have lost our rights and our freedoms. We have lost the ability to control our government. We have lost the ability to find solutions because our minds have been so manipulated to adhere to something that ignores the other side. So I'm not saying that I've broken away from those, how shall I say, I haven't, it's not that I haven't or have or have not broken away from the right wing circles and become somebody in the middle. That's not it at all. Ideologically, I'm still on the right. Ideologically, I'm still a Bible thumping, gun toting, proud to be not only an American, but to be a constitutional, conservative minded, capitalistic minded individual that sees the shenanigans of the far left that's manipulating people into their corner and controlling them for the purpose of distraction, and all while we don't look and say, "Wait a minute, maybe we need to break away from those those bonds, if you will, just long enough to look at the overall picture, to be aware of what's going on." And what's going on is our freedoms are not being lost, they're being tethered, they're being controlled, they're being manipulated by the same people that are perpetuating the, how shall we say, the news stories that make us think certain ways. So let me stop myself there because I can kind of get on a tirade about that. And while I, you know, am really galvanized in those thoughts, I really want to go to where I'm in that direction I was earlier and bring you down the road where you're going to see that while a reflection in my Facebook post of with this friend of mine, but you're also going to see a compassionate side that isn't me getting soft on the other side, but I really believe that until we all can kind of break away from those circles that we've got get locked into, until we kind of break away and be free thinkers again and take control of our own freedom and liberty of thought and First Amendment rights, we're not going to be able to communicate any solutions with anybody. And as a result, we're going to continue to be controlled and manipulated. So the post that I shared on Facebook, which invoked a little bit of a conversation that I'm going to read to you because I think it's important. I couldn't have, well, I mean, I wrote it. So I'm going to say it. So I wrote it and I'm going to say it as good as I wrote it. But it started out where I posted the picture of the Ukrainian girl that got slashed to death on the subway, and the post shows a picture of her looking in fear right after she got sliced up, and it says nobody rioted for this immigrant, and I posted that, and I got a lot of people liked it and thumbs up, but one of my friends who I am very fond of, love dearly, I've been friends with her for a long time, posted apples to oranges, meaning it's just not the same. But and I actually did not post this to infer that nobody that about anything in Minnesota, but in a sense, that's what it was. She says apples to oranges. So I write back and I let you and I want you to grasp this. I love that you commented and are paying attention because I do. I really want people to pay attention. This post was not an attempt to dismiss any other arguments. It is proof that the media and political groups have successfully and selectively divided us. They create situations and unrest amongst us by selecting situations and crafting a narrative to fuel the flames for their benefit. This is not apples to oranges, but proof of the hypocrisy we are seeing by what we are told through the narratives to be mad about. I'm not dismissing what happened in Minnesota, even though there is proof that the person killed was already on the radar. That was the guy, last name of Pretty. He had already been on video kicking ICE cars and vandalizing cars and protesting before. And yes, from our friends who were saying it's a violation of the Second Amendment, I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Anyway, um, even though there's proof that the person killed was already on their radar for past protest violence, which included vandalism. So as a result, tensions are on high on both sides because the politicians and NGOs that are getting exposed are looking for cover and remember, getting exposed for all of the fraud that's going on in Minnesota. Because it's not just all the illegal aliens that are migrating there or getting or ending up there. It's all the fraud. Let's not forget about that. All the NGOs that are getting exposed and are looking for cover. So they fan the flames, they pay some protesters, and they create some narratives to create a mess to cover up what they did. They are using regular people, and regular people become victims because they get incited and fired up on the issues. And next thing you know, their protest, they get excited and they get killed, as you see in some of these people. I know it's kind of a basic way to put it. Anyway, um, I look at the bigger picture. We are all getting divided up for their benefit, the NGOs and the political organizations. I point out all the other ways to look at things or what they are not focusing on as a way to show there is more to what is going on instead of that ICE is bad, Trump is bad, or the protesters are bad, or whatever. I like to expose all the hypocrisy. At this point, they are all apples, all oranges, and they're all nuts. While the people profiting on both sides are benefiting from what may or may not make it into the news cycle, FYI, the Democrat elected official and husband that got shot way back tried to expose the fraud. Not many people realize it. A while back, when the Democrat elected official got killed, some of my Democrat friends said, "Well, nobody's boohooing or upset about these Democrats that got assassinated." But we later find out that those Democrats were trying to expose the fraud by voting against certain bills that were going to perpetuate it. That's just the gist of it. There's more to that anyway. Um, there's more to it than that he was peaceful. Second Amendment, right, hypocrisy, etc. Exposing all the hypocrisy uncovers an overall picture. The majority of ICE mistakes happen from protesters that have been heated up and fueled by the media, the same media that is being selective on which news stories to fan. They are winning every time we don't look at the bigger picture. And that's part of my point here is that the bigger picture is that we aren't looking at the fraud. We're not looking at all the elected officials that are a part of it because we're told to be upset that a protester got killed. Meanwhile, the other story that's not getting exposed is how many people in Iran are getting killed, slaughtered. They're saying that upwards of 30,000 people have been slaughtered in Iran. Nobody's upset about that. Instead, we have our immigration laws being violated here in America, and the far left is fanning the flames to try to give cover to the elected officials that are basically running money laundering schemes to keep money flowing, either with illegal actions or simply by voting in or out the right bills or legislation or whatever that makes the path to their money laundering schemes possible. I'll continue here for a second before I get to the Second Amendment issue. My friend says, I agree with the division, and there's no doubt there's a lot of readily apparent to us. There's a lot not readily apparent to us average Joes. To me, the ICE protests are related to some of the ICE tactics like profiling people and asking for proof of citizenship. Well, problem is that a lot of these things that ICE is doing are things that they were trained to do, are allowed to do, were instructed to do, and are legal to do. Now, do mistakes happen? Absolutely. Do we have instances, few as they may be, where maybe ICE didn't follow protocol and it gets blown out of proportion? Absolutely. But we don't know the circumstances in that situation that may have led to that mistake. Instead, the news media being fed the stories by the NGOs and the political organizations and the NGOs that are profiting from all of this are creating the stories that get perpetuated in the media that make these people think that it's happening all the time. Might I remind you, and I'm gonna cover a little article on this in a minute. During Obama years, a lot of this was going on, but it didn't get covered in the same way. It got covered differently. There are some differences, and I'm going to point out some things that were circulating. And I did a little research on what was true and was not true. And I'll get to that here in a second, but I'll finish up with this post in a minute. So, my friend basically says the ICE protests are related to some of the ICE tactics. My response: we are where we are because neither party has made an effort to truly reform our immigration system or enforce the laws. And I'm going to pause there for a second. It's just like Obamacare. The Republicans knew for generations that the Democrats wanted control of health care, and the Republicans did absolutely nothing about it to offer or put anything in place. Then, as soon as the perfect storm happened and the Democrats took control of everything, they rammed Obamacare through. And it's the same with immigration. Our immigration system has been screwed up for a long time. They've created laws that have that conflict with other laws. They've created all these new policies that are independent of other policies, and as a result, we have basically a really screwed up immigration system that neither party has fixed. And in the last 3, 4, 5, 6 presidencies, for whatever reason, they've looked the other way when it comes to immigration. Now, a lot of people on the right are saying, well, Obama deported that many people. It's almost like promoting Obama, that he did a great job based on a right view. I guess, or somebody on the right viewing it would say, oh, wow, Obama did great. He deported 3 million illegals. And they're making the almost like a conservative issue. It's not even a conservative issue, almost making it to be a Republican thought issue that Obama did good on deportations. But then we also find out all the other immigrants that they immigrated here to America for the purpose of assimilation, I'm sure. But let me not go down that street right now. Republicans and Democrats haven't done anything to fix it. And the last, like I said, 3, 4, 5, 6 presidents have kind of been able to massage the immigration system using not only laws that are on the books, but I guess whispers through the back channels to ICE and other immigration officials on how they should go about doing things. And let me say this. This isn't somebody that has told me, there isn't anybody that has told me this is what's happening. You know, Obama was whispering the back channels, but it's clearly obvious, if you're really paying attention to the bigger picture, that presidents in the past have kind of gotten their way based on their ideologies on how immigration, deportations, and the whole border issue gets handled. It's changed over and over again, and it's clearly obvious by who, when you look at a list of the presidents who's deported the most people. Of course, now I like the comparison. I have to say how many people that Obama deported. He's deported more people than Donald Trump. Well, he was in office for 8 years, and right now we're only in year 5 of Trump. So he had more time to deport more people. Is Trump on track to deport more people than that? of course, we won't know that until the end of the 8 years. Either way, Republicans and Democrats have not done anything to fix the immigration system. Now we have a president who is enforcing the laws on the books, who has, I'm just going to say, unleashed ICE. And I don't mean that in a derogatory angle towards Trump, but basically have said, guys, they're not supposed to be here. Go get them. And there's rules and guidelines that they're following. Yes, mistakes are being made because, I think this is most important why, mistakes have been made, or maybe incidences that aren't right have happened in this deportation process, not because Trump is bad or Tom Homan is bad, not because ICE is bad, but because we've had several, like I said, 3, 4, 5, 6 presidents in the past have allowed our immigration system to be operated on a whim, to be, whether they let it, I mean, look, they say Republicans are just as guilty in some administrations of allowing immigrants. I mean, look, Ronald Reagan gave amnesty to many of them, what, 3 million, I think it was. So we can't say, oh, it's a Democrat issue, a Republican issue. They've all controlled it in their own way on how they wanted to do it. As a result of years and years of this inefficiency, we'll say, or the lack of some of them doing the right thing and the lack of some of them just doing the wrong thing, we have an exorbitant, that's not even the right word. We have way too many illegals in our country. We have had an unvetted, huge numbers of unvetted illegals allowed into our country. We have so many people that have migrated to our country, walked into our country, are in our country, that haven't followed the immigration system, or they went through the immigration system that was set up by one president, but now it's changed under another president. It is so screwed up. It's not like you go, okay, we've got 10 million illegals that all came in this one way, and now we have to create a path to citizenship for those 10 million. No, we've got, and I'm exaggerating, of course, we have 10 million different ways. We have countless of illegal aliens that have come in multiple ways. And then on top of that, we have a lot of them that have committed crimes once here, that were criminals before they came here. Our immigration system is not only overloaded and busting at the seams, it's not only become an it's not even inefficient anymore. It's just jammed up. It's gotten to a point where you can't just untangle it anymore. So as a result, our ICE officials, and I'm not going to say our politicians, they got us in this mess. Our immigration officials and our ICE officials are overloaded, and mistakes are going to happen. And as a result, not only are mistakes going to happen, but now the left is using this as an opportunity to make Trump look bad, even though we could look at Democrat presidents in the past and say, oh, this one deported more than that Republican. I'm going to get to more of that in a second. Let me get through this. I'm going to go back to reading this article that what I wrote here. So we are where we are because neither party has made an effort to truly reform our immigration system or enforce the laws. Now there are the ingredients for the perfect storm to blow the news cycle out of control. Millions of illegals, untold numbers of actual criminals, staggering child and sex trafficking issues. As a result, that's the other thing that nobody's talking about. It's not just immigration, it's crimes against children. Do you know there are more actually, there are more slaves, sex and otherwise, in this world now today than there ever was during the periods of slavery in America? Fact, look that up. So millions of illegals, untold numbers of actual criminals. As a result, politicians who have profited off the system of corruption, using the illegals as the groups benefiting and funding it all. The media that profits from the narratives and news stories being used to fan the flames. And for the first time, having a president that has decided to enforce the laws and allow ICE to do their job, unlike previous presidents on both sides that have tethered them to their ideologies of what immigration should look like. So the result is a situation that is out of hand, an overwhelmed law enforcement, and a public that gets heated up by the narratives. It's no wonder that mistakes are happening and people are getting used and killed, like Pretty and Good. Where do we start on who's to blame? Three groups are to blame. Start with anyone who is not voting and demanding better elections and elections with IDs for that matter. Second group, people who are allowing themselves to get heated up and used for protest instead of looking at the ideological narratives used to control them and all the corruption going on, because many of them are getting paid to protest. And the third group is the media for not covering everything equally and unbiased. We are what we eat. My friend replied and said, detaining immigrants, complying with requirements, and committing crimes, specifically killing bipartisan legislation for reform, revoking legal status when detaining or then detaining. I'll let you have the last word. I don't like debating. And in response, I've got some other information. That's why I said I just want to read what I wrote here because I'm saying it anyway. It's my thoughts. So my response was, I agree on not debating. My goal is not to win an argument. My goal is for people to see there are many other factors out there that may simply open their eyes to a bigger view instead of blaming one person or group. Right now, the system is broken, overloaded, corrupted, and inefficient because of decades of neglect and corruption. So, as a result, things are not going to work properly, regardless of who is in charge. And no one has tried to fix it or operate it as written. But if we are all peaceful in the meantime, our agencies may be able to focus on doing the right thing instead of reacting to people trying to stop them and having casualties and mistakes in the meantime. I get what you were saying. I'm not arguing at all. I too look at the mistakes and deaths and think, why? That's the compassionate side that I was telling you about earlier. Because let's face it, I, I don't want to see anybody killed. I can't, even if in my mind I can justify it with the right leaning narratives that they should not have run over a police officer or accidentally ran over the police officer, or in the case of Pretty, he gets killed for simply having a gun at a protest, which is his Second Amendment right. Not necessarily a good idea, by the way, to bring a gun to a protest. By the way, a law-abiding gun people avoid situations like that, which is something that I'm gonna address this in a minute. I'll address it right now because Trump made a comment about how Pretty should not have carried a gun to a protest. You can't do that. You shouldn't bring a gun to a protest. Some people thought it made him look anti-Second Amendment. Reality is this: when you are a law-abiding, gun-carrying citizen, you make choices daily on where you're going to carry a gun. You know where you can carry a gun and where you can't carry a gun. And when it comes to a protest, many states, actually, I think all of them that have concealed carry laws, you can't carry your gun to a public function in some instances. For instance, in New Orleans, you're not supposed to have your gun on a parade route. Now, do I think you should be able to? Absolutely, 100%. You should, because it's not a protest. But they don't allow it. Protest should probably fall under that purview, because if you're going to a protest and things are going to get heated up, you're probably going to end up being like, oh, I don't know, what do they call that? When you get mad when you're driving and another driver does something that just makes you so mad, and many people end up, you know, pulling out their gun or using their road rage to ram into the other car or shoot the person based on road rage. Well, that's why you should not bring a gun to a protest, because you know you're going to get inflamed. And a law abiding gun owner has enough common sense to know, yeah, I'm not going to do that. But in this case, was Pretty, the guy that got killed that was carrying a gun, who had already been on their radar for vandalism. Was he, I don't know, is that provoking police by having the gun? It maybe is right to bring it, but is it the right thing to do? So when Trump reacted and said, you can't do that, I don't think he's being anti-Second Amendment. He's just thinking like most law-abiding, gun-carrying individuals who say, you know what? I'm not going to bring a gun there because I don't want road rage or protest rage to kick in and get me in trouble, especially in the event that, like Pretty, he was already on the radar. So is it anti-Second Amendment to say you should not bring your gun to a protest? I don't think it's anti-Second Amendment at all. I think it's common sense. Now, don't get me wrong. That's because the world we live in today, where there are protests, or there are people protesting law enforcement that is enforcing immigration laws on the books. Yes, mistakes are being made. I get it. But you don't protest the mistakes. I know some people do. It's a First Amendment right, by the way. I'm not saying that they can't or should not be allowed to. But the reality is this: they are protesting the law. And it's not like it's a law that was created to take away their gun rights or their First Amendment rights. It's a law to protest. It's a law that it was made to protect U.S. citizens in a system where an overload of immigrants would cause chaos in our communities, where citizens don't get jobs, or in the case of some of these criminals, citizens are being harmed by criminals and illegal activity. Again, it's like yelling fire in a crowded theater. Sure, it's your First Amendment right, but it's not necessarily the right thing to do. And that's what I think Trump meant by that. So I look at the mistake. So I get what I told my friend, I get what they're saying. I looked at the mistakes, and I also pointed out that while I understand that, what my understanding why mistakes are being made is because our system is so overloaded by illegal immigrants, and so many crimes are being committed by illegal immigrants, and the sex trafficking and the child abuse that's going on in this illegal immigration process is happening. While I certainly understand it, I too scratched my head. There was a story in New Orleans where an NOPD police officer who was or a guy going through the academy, he'd been through all the screening process. He was even issued his duty weapon, and he was reporting for his immigration status and was just about to graduate the academy, and ICE picked him up. So that story is yet to unfold on why. So I too scratch my head. There's a compassionate side of me that says, even though I am glad that we have a president that is making sure the laws are enforced and ridding of our country of illegal aliens, which take away jobs from Americans, take away resources from Americans, take away money from Americans because we're helping pay for immigrants instead of helping pay for our poor. And well, I know we're doing both. We're helping our poor by printing money, which is going to burden every American in the future. We're not helping veterans like we should be. So I'm glad that we finally have a president that's getting the system enforced. Am I unhappy about mistakes? I am compassionate that there are people who have lost some rights through the immigration through that they got through their immigration process because of the mistakes. I am sensitive. I am certainly um, sensitive to that, and I don't like it. But unfortunately, it's because our system's overloaded from generations of politicians doing the wrong thing and neither party fixing our immigration system. The system has been messed up for a long time and not corrected by either side, and now the process is going to be harder to unravel. At least we have some people trying to fix it now, and a president also that's doing the same thing, and hopefully they will do the right thing. But people that benefited from the corruption are the ones to blame in the meantime for fanning the flames that are causing most of the problems. Again, I don't like the mistakes either, and I can make the argument defending all the actions, and I feel bad for the ones who have been detained erroneously, but I can also see how broken our system is and see narratives being used to distract and fan the flames, and in conclusion, how certain news stories like the immigrant killed on the train have been excluded because they don't incite the right fears or the right people to perpetuate their narratives. And that is my thought on that one in particular. And by the way, I'm going to put another banner up for my viewers here on my Rumble and YouTube channel that if you want to try RNC store where you get your apricot seeds at a discount using my promo code WWFA, go to rncstore.com/WWFA. Um, I'm going to talk about the Obama record real quick, just to get this straight. 56 people died in ICE custody due to horrible conditions, according to the right leaning ACLU. ACLU is left leaning. So I'm sure that's a mistake by somebody. 3.1 million people were deported under Obama, and more than half of them were deported without hearing or a judge or due process. Tom Holman was the person that was under Obama handling ICE and our immigration system, and every Democrat-run sanctuary city cooperated with ICE. That, my friends, I found to be false. I fact-checked all of these things. Tell me again how this is not a manufactured outrage communist revolution. I completely agree that this is the whole immigration system being used to not only import all these illegal immigrants and hurt Americans and try to destroy a presidency in the meantime is part of a communist revolution. And I will bring up something that When I fact checked, did the sanctuary cities respond, or did the sanctuary cities cooperate with Obama's deportations? They did not. So while that other piece of information said that everybody, did kumbaya and everybody got along, that's false. But notice it was a more behind the scenes thing with Obama because the media did cover for for Obama and didn't call him out on it. So sanctuary jurisdictions reacted to the Obama Secure Commission program by refusing to cooperate with ICE detainer requests, passing local and state limits on cooperation, pursuing legal and political challenges, and pushing the federal government to change course. A backlash that helped prompt the administration to replace secure communities with the Priority Enforcement Program, another pretty name for another program. Those actions were presented by advocates as protection for community trust and civil liberties and were denounced by opponents as interference with federal enforcement, turning the dispute into a national political flashpoint. Again, note that when Obama did the same thing, they didn't they didn't destroy him publicly. Instead, they kind of went, look, change it up a little bit, create another program to make it look like you're doing the right thing, and we all agree. So anyway, there's some other articles, some other things that I wanted to point out here. The Daily Wire came out with a post that I liked, and I'm just going to put the pictures up that shows a lot of the hypocrisy which is being used to not only fan the flames but divide us up. And again, control our freedoms and liberties. When we're divided up and our thoughts are controlled, we surrender our freedoms and liberties so they don't have to control them. They riot for a man killed by Border Patrol, yet say nothing for all those killed by illegal immigrants. They refer to ICE as Trump's secret police, even though it's been used by every president since 2001. They blame Trump for all of the chaos, yet keep encouraging people to obstruct and antagonize agents. This is something I wanted to point out. They've made Trump such a bad guy on the left by continuing. Look, for my friends that don't like Trump, I get it. I'm not agreeing with you, but I get it, because when you just pay attention to the things that make him look bad, which are the things that the media really pushes the hardest, I get why people, as I said in the beginning of the podcast, people's thoughts get manipulated with narratives that get repeated over and over again and highlighted in such a way. But when you look at, say, Obama, he did a lot of the same things and said a lot of stupid things also. But the narratives in the media do a different news stories for him. They give him cover. They soften it a little bit. They find ways to where people aren't convinced that he's the bad guy, that, well, the cover covers most of it, and then the soft stories make it more dismissed. But because I believe that this whole immigration system is being used to not only infiltrate America with people who will dilute the patriotic citizens of this country, drain the American system in a way that benefits politicians, NGOs, and, of course, political organizations that profit off of this. Of course, they're going to make the man look bad, the man that's trying to stop it or allowing ICE to go enforce the immigration laws. Of course, they're going to try to make him look bad any way they can. When I say it this way, I'm not giving, 100% thumbs up to Trump because while I agree with the general direction of having ICE enforce laws and having our immigration system enforced, I too sometimes go, are there some ways that we can round the edges? Can the president say some things a little nicer, a little bit different? Sure. Does that mean that when he says something hard or difficult, that he's a bad person or he doesn't support the Second Amendment or something else? Doesn't mean that at all. Do I wish that he kind of think about some things first? That's just not Trump. I'm not giving him cover, not making excuses for him. I'm trying just to simply give understanding because while I believe that there's a lack of understanding of people that are on the right or even those that are 100% support of Trump, I also think that there it needs to be understanding of people not on the left, the far left, but some of those one issue voters that want to see the immigration done maybe a little bit softer. I don't necessarily want to agree with them that it should be softer, but I would like to find a way to get them to understand that our immigration system is so out of control. Illegal immigration has been allowed for so long that our country is going to suffer serious consequences because our bureaucratic system, our welfare state, the heart of government that wants to give money and give help, which I don't agree with because it's part of the bureaucratic system, is taking resources from Americans, printing money, putting us in debt in ways that the immigration system or the broken immigration system is going to hurt the system in place. Those systems work better when they grow with the population naturally. I don't agree with the inflated bureaucratic system. I don't agree with most of the welfare state the way that it is. I think it all needs to be taken to the ground and leveled out and redone completely. I think it all just needs to be fixed and repaired. But as it is, it will grow with our population. Now, of course, our national debt is, the leveraging arm of it and allowing it to grow because we're borrowing money to let the system grow with the population. But when you enter millions and millions and millions more people into the system and allow them in, we're going to collapse the bureaucratic system, which actually might make my point and be a good thing. But the problem is, regular Americans are going to suffer the consequences, and we don't have to go that route if we would control our immigration system. If we enforced it as it's being done now, the country becomes a more stable place for citizens. And my friends, that is why I think that the leftists and many Democrats want a collapse of the system because they want to rebuild it their way. And they realize that if they bring enough illegal immigrants in that will side with them, they have for lack of a better word, they have their own army to do it. And that is, I believe, the war that is going on right now in our country. And the people that are protesting don't even realize they're getting used. Most of those people are getting inflamed by the narratives and many of them are getting paid. And many of them have lost their freedoms after years of listening to the narratives to tell you that Trump is bad, Republicans are bad, conservatives are bad, anybody who loves America is bad. If you don't love immigrants, you're bad. Because they're focusing on the smaller issues instead of looking at the overall of what's going on, where government is getting bigger and bigger. Politicians are getting richer and richer off of this. NGOs that help fund all the operations are becoming the launch pads or the funnel that this money goes through. Non-political organizations, political organizations, they're all making money off of it. And we've got career politicians, many of which who stay in office simply because they have paved the road for so much of this corruption to happen that their war chest, their campaign war chest just get fatter and fatter. And there's no way for the little guy who may do the right thing to beat them. Back to this meme. They blame Trump for all the chaos, yet they keep encouraging people to obstruct and antagonize agents. We see this over and over again, the call for violence against law enforcement and the people doing right. They're outraged for the 600,000 deported by Trump, yet silence on the 3 million deported by Obama. I'm just showing both sides of this. This is Trump's 5th year. Obama had 8. Will Trump is he on path or on target to get to the 3 million? 600,000 doesn't seem like a big number, or doesn't seem like he will get to the 3 million. But let's find out some information on that later and get apples to apples. They demand justice and jail time for law enforcement, yet won't put repeat criminals behind bars. They call out the masked men wanting to see papers when they wouldn't let you into a restaurant without a vax card. And it's not about justice, it's about propaganda. That was from the Daily Wire. I just thought it was something good that made the point on that. And as I go back to another article that I wanted to bring up here, I already talked about how Obama deported 3 million people, but I had an article on that. Yes, the U.S. deported more than 3 million people during Obama's presidency without a chance to plead case in court. During the administration of U.S. President Barack Obama, immigration authorities deported more than 3 million people, 75 to 83% of whom did not see a judge or have the opportunity to plead a case. According to the Department of Homeland Security, DHS data from fiscal years 2009 to 2016. It's kind of a repeat of the same information. So I'll go back to the Facebook articles. The other article that I wanted to talk about, it said, this I've already proved this to be wrong, that the sanctuary cities, this is where I read the article where it said the sanctuary cities cooperated with ICE, and we later found out that they didn't upon research. So there's miscommunication out there, which is another thing for me that I wanted to point out, where a lot of people that are getting fired up over the actions of ICE are really getting fired up over false information. They're getting fired up over single situations or situations that aren't happening very often. And as a result, they're getting told that they should be angry because it's happening all the time. And my point is, don't adhere to one side. Look for other information, because when you find other information, look, I look all the time. As I said, I engage with my friends that, are against the ICE actions. I engage with friends that are unhappy with Trump. I try to find out other information, because when you broaden your base when you broaden your base of information, without giving up your own ideologies, you not only find yourself in a place where you're more aware of the bigger picture, you get less inflamed about the extremes on either side. Again, this is not an attempt for you to give up your ideologies and come together with your communist friends and your left-wing nut jobs, that are out there protesting and say, we're going to sit by the campfire and sing kumbaya. It helps you find that circle of people that, some that might not think exactly like you, but you don't realize we don't realize that there's more people like all of us that we have more in common than those extremes that the news likes to shine the light on to make everybody feel guilty and get their freedoms and liberties manipulated with that guilt and feeling like they've got to go do something to prove the other side wrong. I'm still that right-leaning guy. I'm still that Second Amendment believing, Bible hugging, God, family, freedom first, America, constitutionalist, capitalism, less government guy. But it just goes to show you that as far right as that sounds, we've got friends on the left that when we stop pushing each other away, we take power away from elected officials who don't care what side we're on, no matter what party they're in. We take power away from non-government organizations. We take government away from political organizations. We take money away from the super PACs that dump billions of dollars to change our hearts and minds and souls to get certain people elected that are career-long politicians most of the time. Not let it go, but open your mind a little bit more to what's happening with the bigger picture here. Because when we're focusing on one or two protesters being killed here, but we're not even talking about 30,000 protesters plus or minus 5,000 being slaughtered in Iran and women raped. You're not compassionate if you want to scream that good or pretty deserve better and you ignore Iranians. You're not any better. You're just a hypocrite if you're not recognizing how governments who control our freedoms and liberties are gaining more power over us. And when you ignore that, you don't recognize where we can really make a difference. You don't recognize where more of us having more in common and coming together on some even if it let me just say ICE. I'm a really jump a little bit here. You might be against the mistakes that ICE is making. But if you don't allow yourself to be inflamed and enraged and get protest rage basically by what ICE is doing and you stay out of it, most of the people that have gotten killed or hurt in the process here are the ones protesting. Let ICE do their job. Less mistakes are going to happen. As a result, we get illegals out, and then you can focus on elections and getting other people elected that are going to fix the immigration system instead of kicking the can down the road, just like the national debt or just like what's happening with the national debt. We are under attack in America. Our freedoms and liberties are under attack by all of the distractions that are being thrown at us. We are bombarded by the narratives that make us feel guilty, manipulate our hearts and minds with that guilt instead of facts. We're losing our First Amendment rights through that guilt and those narratives that are being used to manipulate our hearts and minds. I also want to read another little article, a little short article. Democrat governors can't stop ICE from enforcing the law because Obama sued Arizona in 2012 and SCOTUS gave feds ultimate authority over immigration enforcement. So these are all the things that it's almost like, I'm going to jump a little bit here too, Roe v. Wade. When the Supreme Court, SCOTUS, gave Roe v. Wade or the abortion rights back to the states and take it out of the federal control, everybody got mad that they were losing rights, not realizing that they were gaining more rights over whether they wanted abortion to be legal or not in their own states. But in this case, people forget the facts that SCOTUS already made the decision over the enforcement, but nobody's talking about that because that happened during Obama. And everybody wants to give him cover. A lot of this that's happening now happened during the Obama administration. Nobody's talking about that, though. And we got the Federalist Papers, a short snippet on there. Fun fact, 100%. This is just something fun that I noticed a little. It was a meme. 100% of people who stay at home and don't obstruct law enforcement don't get shot. Now, for the people in the back who are saying, but Pretty was exercising his Second Amendment right and he got shot because he had a gun. Well, yeah, because he was already on the radar as being an agitator. And now, did a mistake happen? I haven't said that yet. Did a mistake happen? Possibly. Possibly an ICE agent was overzealous or got scared, overreacted, however you say that, saw the gun, and maybe we'll find out later that it was a mistake, that ICE should not have done that. I'm not saying that it's not a mistake. I'm not saying that. I'm simply saying, for purpose of discussion, that I think it's very possible that they saw this guy as an agitator from before, recognized him, maybe he was resisting, they see the gun, somebody shouts gun, and let's just say, to be an advocate for the other side, that Pretty got shot because an ICE agent overreacted. This is why you should not bring a gun to a protest, because protests are heated, and thinking gun owners don't bring guns to protest. Unless, of course, in some examples, like, again, being an advocate for the other side, maybe Pretty was just trying to provoke a little bit. Maybe he was hoping for a little trouble. And as a result, he got trouble in the form of possibly a mistake. The agent, following protocol, may or may not have overreacted, but it doesn't make ICE predatory. Doesn't mean that they're looking for it. It simply means that a mistake happened because somebody was carrying a gun. It doesn't have anything to do with a violation of his Second Amendment rights or trying to deny his Second Amendment rights. It simply means that that's why thinking gun owners don't bring their guns to a protest. And in some states, there are laws on how big of a crowd you can bring your gun to. And that will vary state to state. But again, law abiding gun owners know the laws. And the last meme that I'm gonna do for that say is this is just a kind of a repeat. For those on the right that still don't get it, Alex Pretty was not killed for exercising his First Amendment right. He was killed for exercising his Second Amendment right. Let that sink in. And I could not disagree more with that statement because they were not killing him for his Second Amendment right. They were killing him because they saw a gun and possibly a mistake was made, but not a violation of his Second Amendment right. That, my friends, is where I'd like to leave us today with this, that we just simply need to look at a more broad view of what's happening, a bigger view that we're losing our freedom and liberty because we're being controlled by media and the narratives and the outrage, the political form of road rage, the protesting form of road rage. We're being controlled by this. And as a result, we are giving our freedoms away. We are giving our power away when if we would simply find what we have that we can agree on and stop allowing ourselves to be distracted, absolutely do not give up your personal beliefs. Don't give up your ideologies. Adhere to your conservative values. Adhere to your liberal values, if that's what it is. But no matter where you are, I can almost promise you 80% or more of us all find ourselves at some point in that same circle. And if we stop allowing ourselves to be distracted, politicians are going to lose control. NGOs, political organizations, all going to lose control because more of us are shining the light on the corruption and the problems, and they won't have any solution but to fix it because more of us together will vote them out. My friends, that's it for today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning into my show. I'd be honored and grateful if you shared it with somebody that you think might be interested. If you're listening to the podcast, you can check out my show on Rumble and YouTube at William Wallace for America. If you're watching it on Rumble on video, vice versa, go to your favorite podcast app and check out my show on podcast. You can listen while you're driving or something like that. And I'd just be honored and grateful for that. And again, do not give up your beliefs, but instead make yourself aware of other information that's going on because that will empower you, others in our country, and save us from going into a further demise of where they want us to be to control, i.e., take away all of our freedoms. Thank you all very much. Have a great day.